Good afternoon and welcome to KRVIA Encounters. Safdie Architect is a design studio imbued with the spirit of innovation, guided by the belief that architecture should be inherently timeless, connected to nature, and profoundly humane. Founded by pioneering architect Moshe Safdie, the firm operates in the model of a design studio with a forward-thinking, research-oriented practice. Based in Boston, with offices in Jerusalem, Singapore, and Shanghai, Safdie Architects draws upon a depth of experience to deliver some of the world's largest and most complex commissions in imaginative and unexpected ways. As a partner and director of Safdie Architect, Charu Kokate leads the firm's efforts in Asia. Working closely with Moshe Safdie and a core team of leaders, Charu has worked on an extensive portfolio of projects spanning a variety of geographic contexts, scales, and programs. Charu is an influential point of contact for clients, contractors, and consultants from project inception to completion. A true advocate for high-level construction practices, she is integral to delivering practice that embody the original design intent. Some of her notable projects include Marina Bay Sands Integrated Resort, Sky Habitat Residential Towers, Jules Shanghai Airport in Singapore. Winner of the President's Design Award for both Marina Bay Sands Integrated Resort and Jules Shanghai Airport, Charu is an active mentor of young professionals and is often seen as a keynote speaker and design judge both internationally and in Singapore, where she is based. Welcome, Charu, to KRVIA Encounters.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're perfectly audible.
Okay. Thank you for having me. I'm going to share my slides. Just bear with me, guys. Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. You can all hear me. I am here to discuss some of my projects, and I want to start with something that we are all familiar with. And this is the year 2020, 2021. And this is a very familiar picture, isn't it? It's a picture of an urban density, concrete jungle, congested spaces. And add to that a new problem of the pandemic. The pandemic has exponentially compounded the existing challenge of dense urban settings. COVID-19 pandemic has caused and is continuing to cause an unprecedented impact on urban development. People in cities are limited by the inadequate spaces in their homes. Lockdowns all over the world have forced us, designers and architects, to review and rethink of spaces we create. And I want to take you back in history, 1967, more than 50 years ago. A young architect, a young student in his early 20s, decided to rethink the design of an apartment building. He did that by arranging the blocks three-dimensionally in a way that would give them more daylight and ventilation. Breaking the traditional form of orthogonal high-rise structures and stacking the prefabricated concrete boxes of different geometrical configuration, locating each box in such a way that it was a step back from its immediate neighbor. This provided each apartment with a roof garden with constant flow of fresh air and maximum natural light, qualities that were unprecedented for a 12-story apartment building. Habitat 67 was born. Habitat 67 pioneered the integration of two housing typologies, the suburban garden home and the economical high-rise building. This visionary designer is none other than Mr. Moshe Safdie, who has spent a lifetime designing architecture based on humanist principles. For everyone a garden has been his motto, a beautiful notion that sees architecture as a generous act of connecting us to nature, creating meaningful spaces of community that serve as catalyst for vibrant public life. And I'm very proud to say that I'm a part of this special team of people, this special team with the design studio led by Mr. Moshe Safdie, where we design and build spaces to be enjoyed by all. In what we do, we have a global and lasting presence in the form of wonderful buildings for millions for people to enjoy. Whether it's a performing arts center like the Kaufman Center in Kansas City, or a library in Salt Lake City in Utah, or a Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, Israel, or even Khalsa Heritage Center in India, in Punjab. I hope you guys have seen this. Whether it's a headquarters for United States Institute of Peace, or a mega mixed-use project in Chongqing, China, or even a residential tower in Colombo, Sri Lanka, we have always believed that projects' largest civic role should be considered at the heart of every design. Because we truly believe that buildings have a strong presence and they need to be built with a lot of understanding and care. Buildings make a strong impact beyond the piece of land on which they are built. They improve the quality of people who use them. I would like to take you on a journey and show you some of our projects in Singapore to demonstrate this principle. Let's start with, especially Singapore, which is like a small island nation and has the highest urban population in Southeast Asia. And we've been really fortunate in designing a variety of building types in this tiny country. I want to begin with Marina Bay Sands, Singapore, which I think you all are familiar with, at least you've heard of it. The site of Marina Bay Sands that I've seen on the screen was a 35-acre reclaimed land at the edge of the financial district. And it's an amazing site, visible from downtown Singapore, from all the other sides of the city. We were awarded this mega project to an international design competition. Now, this is a high-density, mixed-use integrated resort that brings together multiple projects: hotels, convention centers, shopping, dining, theaters, you name it. And this is all across the bay from Singapore's Central Business District, the CBD. And it was very important for our team to create buildings that celebrated the unique character of Singapore's downtown, that the buildings related to the neighborhoods, that without mimicking the buildings, they needed to be part of something much bigger than just by themselves. And since it was like a microcosm of the city because of its big program, our team took inspiration from the mosaic depicting the holy city of Jerusalem. You can see it on the left-hand side, where the main street provided an organizing address for all the public buildings within the city. Our team explored the variation of this concept, integrating the waterfront of the Singapore River and the Promenade, and creating streets that connected the public transportation. This resulted in a new kind of an urban meeting place that became a vibrant location for recreational activity. So it wasn't just in plan that we were looking at this connection, but the massing configuration was also very important. Because this was a mega project, it was a huge project, and we wanted to make sure that we were humanizing the mega scale. So basically what was very important to us was the way it would be viewed from across the waterfront. So we created this three-dimensional hierarchy that addresses the issue of the mega scale, organized from the shorter components to the taller construct that directs a viewer's eye from the arcade of the buildings to the Skypark. This really helped create an urban landscape that worked with the human scale. The series of landscape gardens extend from the tropical green landscape of the river to the different roofs to the Skypark. This really helped create publicly accessible levels along the Bayfront Promenade. The public promenade of the building, public promenade really stitches the gap between the city and our building and the project. And this public promenade changes during the night. It is a space that is used for daily recreational activities by the residents and transforms in the evening as gathering space for a variety of events. Even the roofs of the shopping mall, the glazed roofs of the shopping mall, let the light penetrate deep into the basements. So even when you're on level 1, as you can see people standing over there, you can look down to the basement. This really helps giving direction. It helps people walk around the mall. It's not confusing at all. Using natural light is an important factor when you're designing big projects. Use of color and geometric patterns in our interior design really made the spaces very lively and interesting. integration of art and architecture. Large-scale installations created by 8 internationally renowned artists were seamlessly integrated throughout the building. Whether it was a chandelier designed by Anthony Gormley or whether it was some artwork done by other artists. This site-specific artwork extended from the 23-story atrium of the hotel to the exterior of the building, and thus created an inspiring and breathtaking path through the Marina Bay Sands hotels. And then located 57 stories high up and cantilevering at least 65 meters from the hotel building, Hotel Tower 3, the Skypark observation deck boasts scenic views of the panoramic vistas of the Marina Bay and Singapore cityscope. Here you must understand that by creating this observation deck, which is like a public space, helps people, one and all, to come to the deck. You didn't have to be a hotel guest to do that. And that allowed people and communities to come and observe and enjoy the view of Singapore. And when you are designing projects, it's not just about creating the program or following all the briefs that the client give us, but it's also about what can you add for the community, what can you add for the society, what can you add for the neighborhood. And this became an important task for a project like this. The promenade on the waterfront, the Skypark, all added to the dynamics of the project. As you all must have seen in pictures, the infinity pool that stretches from Tower 1 to Tower 3 is a big attraction to locals and the tourists from all over the world. It's been featured in magazines, it's featured in movies, and has really made Singapore very famous, and Marina Bay Sands very famous too. The Art Science Museum, which is on the promenade around the waterfront, it exhibits and co-locates the exhibits and bridges the gap between the arts and sciences. The museum is organized as major exhibition spaces positioned around a center open space atrium. As you can see in the section, the first exhibit is up on level 2, as well as we have gallery spaces below in the basement, below the water, below the lily ponds. Each exhibition hall has access to daylight and from the skylight above and from the central atrium. We've integrated lighting, controls, and mechanism, and that allow the spaces to be transformed to black boxes. And sometimes the windows from the gallery are used to really get the natural light shining on the exhibits that are displayed. The Art Science Museum, as you can see in this picture, is supported by a steel lattice diagrid and 10 steel columns. The center itself is like a sculptural centerpiece, and that allows the building, gives the appearance of the building that it is floating above the water. And the reflecting pool over here, this definitely creates like a semi-covered public space. And so this is also another public space that was created by us, and so it did have to be part of the museum in the sense that you didn't have to visit the gallery to visit the space. The facade itself, which is clad by FRP, fiber reinforced polymer, which is generally used for yachts and ships. This facade acts as a dynamic screen for projections. Singapore government uses it to project, depending on the season. Like today, they're celebrating National Day, and so I'm sure that they have projected the national flag on this facade. When you're designing a project like this, which is so big and so complex, it is very important to break down the scale of this variety of spaces. Our design breaks down the scale of 1 million square meter of integrated resort, separating the components, all the separate components, and allowing each to express its identity while expanding access to sunlight and air. And therefore, this helps create an environment, one that is easy to appreciate, as well as relate to human scale, which is very important for projects like this. This is, as you all know, it's a global, Marina Bay Sands is a global phenomenon and is recognized as a symbol of Singapore. It is an example how good architecture or good design can be a catalyst for economic growth and development. The building has transformed a piece of reclaimed land into a vital piece of the city. Moving from the big scale, I want to take you to a residential scale that we designed in Singapore. You all know how difficult it is to design in dense neighborhood. Sky Habitat is located in high density public housing neighborhood of Bishan, and we were charged to design a 39-story middle income residential tower. Buildings, when you have to design in land scarce cities like Singapore where everything is very tight, it often the result is small living spaces, compromised amenities, limited access to outdoor space. But our design actually does the opposite. Our design aspires to include large range of amenities to serve the residents, from swimming pools, playgrounds, gardens, and communal spaces for parties and events. With the fractal geometry surface pattern, I hope you can see the animation, the dramatic stepping structure, network of gardens open to sky. Sky Habitat is part of a series of global projects evolving from the Habitat 67, the one I showed you in the beginning. Instead of independent towers, the building's two towers are linked by three bridging sky gardens. The end result is really a three-dimensional matrix of homes with terraces, balconies, communal gardens. It brings landscape, light and air to every level of the building. The units feature multiple orientations relative to the sun, and provides generous views to the outside. The strongest visual feature of the building is the stepped elevation of the tower. More than 1/3 of the units are located along the stepping edges with access to penthouse-like exterior roof terrace gardens. Three bridging sky gardens link these two stepping towers and they create an interconnected streets, gardens, and terraces in the air, which provide a variety of spaces of common recreation and congregation spaces. You have to understand that during COVID, when people were locked in their apartments and could not go out, these spaces, when you design spaces like this, these are the spaces that create, that bring people together. You can safely interact with each other. People could step out and breathe freely, breathe natural air. The balconies helped, the terraces helped. And I think that when you're designing an apartment building, generally speaking, the developers will give you a certain program. We need so many units, this 2-bedroom units, 3-bedroom units. It's our duty to create these spaces. It's our duty to prove to them that, you know what, you can use these. For example, the bridges, they're not just used for structural support, but you can create landscape areas, landscape zones, and it's almost like streets, gardens. You can create public spaces that belong to one and all, to the whole community. We were able to create a garden, almost like 70% of the site, which is a very tight site, was developed into a series of additional gardens, outdoor event spaces, swimming pools, tennis courts, and walking paths. So when you add the bridges to it, 100% green area, whatever the site area was, we were able to provide more than that as the end result. While providing great quality of life and mitigating the sense of density in areas like this, we have to maximize contact with nature. And the result, especially the result of our project, is a village-like clustering of residential units. And this integrates architecture and plant life into a singular experience. And I want to take this experience further, where we integrate architecture and plant life in our next project, which is Jewel Changi Airport. Jewel Changi Airport was also a design competition. Located in the center of Changi Airport, which is 3 separate terminals, as you can see in the drawing, Jewel is sandwiched, the site was sandwiched between a control tower, the red dot that you see, and Terminal 1. This site used to be an open air car park with a train running through it. The train connected the two other terminals, Terminal 2 and Terminal 3. Very tight site. And the competition design program required aviation, shopping, parking. And putting these programs together itself was very challenging, but we strongly believe that in addition to fulfilling the brief, our design should include a timeless attraction. an attraction that would be for the whole community, for travelers as well as for locals. A community garden that would be centered around a tall waterfall. Our design proposal consisted of more than 135,000 square meters of space spread across 10 floors and connected all three terminals. And the 10 floors were like 5 floors in the basement and five floors above ground. Now, contrary to the traditional retail practice where shopping is the main focus, as you enter a mall, shopping is the focus. The focus of our project was a 15,000 square meter of a public garden without any commercial activity and was accessible 24 hours, 7 days a week. So this garden was the main feature of our project. This garden extends from level 1 all the way up to level 5. As you can see in this section. So in this section, you can see there's a garden in the center with the waterfall, with shopping around, and of course, parking and everything below. The waterfall centered in the garden created an amazing serene space in the heart of the garden. This garden is neither a decorative display nor a simple botanical exhibit within the building, but it's a landscape of grandeur and wonder. This very complex project, we had a lot of consultants to help us out. And working with these amazing engineers at Bureau Happel from New York, they help us rationalize the form of the building. The form is very complex. It's a non-symmetrical toroid, which was non-symmetrical because of the waterfall above, because the train went through the center of the building. So we had to make it non-symmetrical where the oculus shifted down south. Bureau Happel helped us create a delicate diagonal shell structure to cover the garden and space. They help us rationalize the form and help us with the design of the whole diagonal system. We also had help from our environmental engineers at Atelier 10, who helped us design the comfort of humans and trees. We used different strategies like selecting the right glazing, the right glass with high visual light transmittance and low solar gains so that we could help the growth of the plants without increasing the heat in the building. We also used radiant floor cooling to create a comfortable environment. Our environmental engineers also helped us with mapping the daylight so that our landscape designers could select trees based on the actual light that the building received. At the topmost level, where we were very close to the roof and very close to the sun, basically, as compared to level 1, we selected trees that provided shade, like canopy trees. But as you come down the step garden, which we call the forest valley, the trees were tall and so that the light could filter down the shrubs below. We did full-size mock-ups to resolve issues so that we could have smooth construction process. The mock-ups helped us understand the landscape elements, the paving design, how materials came together, combination of plans. We could study all that in advance. We also did facade mock-ups to study the whole system, the facade system, basically to see how the glass came together, the nodes came together, the diagonal system. As well as we did a mock-up of the water feature to study how the water falls from the height of 30 meters. We did this so that we could have a smooth construction process. But our construction process was not an issue as much as the site was, because the site being so tight, sandwiched between the control tower and an active Terminal 1. The terminal did not close, not for a single day. It was very active, and Changi Airport is extremely busy. And so this was absolute nightmare for the contractor. They had very limited access. They had deadlines for completion because it impacted the terminal. This picture was taken during construction, and as you can see, it just completely fills the site. And because of that, whether it was outside or inside, working was always a challenge because there were so many teams working together. Over here, you can see the radiant cooling system being installed. At the same time, you can see concrete work done on one side, and other side they're putting in the stone paving is going on. I mean, it's like they're lifting up trees, all sorts of things happening at the same time. Glass outside itself was a challenging process because of the shape of the building. We had to use specialists to install the glass facade. We call it the Spider-Man. They had to really climb on ropes, and using ropes, they installed the glass. It was an amazing site. amazing structure, very, very complex. One of the most complex projects done by us, which needed really everything had to be integrated. I mean, it was so amazing that it was so complex, but people were so interested and curious all over the world that the local newspaper had a center page describing how the design and creation was happening, and they had a whole graphic setup to show us, explaining the various aspects of the design of the project. We have more than 2,500 trees and more than 100,000 shrubs from all over the world, all set in planters on the concrete wall. And the planters, the planters also had to accommodate all the services, because that was the only way we could get the air conditioning and all sorts of air conditioning, lighting, cameras, tree washing poles, a lot of things. And it was a major coordination exercise, a lot of effort involving different building trades, different engineers, different construction teams. The project is a technical marvel, from digital engineering to automated fabrication, from precision manufacturing to on-site assembly. The structure of the building and the structure, everything in the building, represents radical advancement in emerging technology. The garden is built entirely on structure. This itself, as I was mentioning, needed huge collaboration. The collaboration effort between the architects, the landscape architects, environmental engineers, structural engineers, contractors, and all of them working towards a common goal of creating something really beautiful and wonderful, something really special, as you can see in the image. Because you have to know that after all, a building, a great building, is all about relationships at the end. Relationships between the materials, relationship between the people, different teams, all working together. It's well connected to Terminal 2 and Terminal 3 with link bridges, and this really makes it convenient for locals and travelers to access the building. It is also the first place where many visitors appreciate upon arrival in Singapore. We call it the new gateway to Singapore. It is a new building paradigm for airports, where a range of facilities from landside airport operations like the lounges, early check-in, luggage, and combined with shopping and commercial areas and entertainment, all reside under one roof. In a comfortably air-conditioned space, Jewel introduces people to wonders of plant life and opens their eyes to natural world. It brings natural light through a 14-meter high acrylic funnel, extending the wonder of the planting and natural light down to the basement areas, which otherwise normally tend to be dull and dark. It has become a precedent where nature and city are one, where a traveler really feels rejuvenated, because after traveling for so many hours, this is very refreshing to them. And the local residents are enthralled what the place has to offer for their families in terms of entertainment. The whole of level 5 has attractions where the family can spend all day together. It is a building, according to us, this is a building that belongs to everyone, locals, travelers, visitors. The space is packed with people taking photos and wondering, how did they do it? People are filled with sense of wonder. There's a smile on everyone's face when they enter the building. The senior citizens on wheelchairs sit in peace and enjoy nature in a very comfortable environment. Walking in the forest valley with the forest around you and the planting around you, with the sun pouring up from above, rain in the form of waterfall falling from the sky, it's really like experiencing a natural wonder. And definitely not an interior garden. It takes you somewhere out of this world experience. The same space transforms into a magical wonderland in the evening. When travel is so stressful today, in today's world, where people going to travel, people going to airports find it very stressful just dealing with this whole thing with baggage and check-in and everything, Jewel Changi Airports returns wonder to air travel. It has created a new paradigm for how we think about journey and the public spaces related related to the journey. This is done by merging architecture, public space, landscape, transit in a new way. Transit travelers are extending their stay in Singapore just to experience the space. New York Times wrote an article about vacationing at Changi Airport. And this was never heard of before. Like I mentioned before, airports are very stressful. And New York Times emphasizing the fact that you can come and vacation at Changi Airport, that was something that was so wonderful for all of us. I have to say, working on this project since day one of the design and construction, a building such as Jewel really impacts millions of people from all over the world, from all walks of life. It's a complex hybrid layering of spaces and experiences and dimensions which brings people together all from all over the world. It is a place where Singapore meets the world and the world meets Singapore. And it is a testament to a teamwork and the team's vision of designing and constructing a place that can sustain life. Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful lecture. I think it's great that you managed to leave such an impact on already iconic city. I now call upon our Dean of Academic Affairs, Shantanu Puredi, to say a few words about the company. Shantanu?
Hi, thanks, Charu. This was a fantastic presentation, and our students, I'm sure, are enthralled and loved it. I myself personally visited two of these projects, the Marina Bay Sands in Singapore, which has obviously this fantastic view of the city. And I also was told, when on my way out, I should visit the Jewel. And I said, okay, I'll give myself 1 hour when I leave Singapore. And my friends who are all architects in Singapore told me that's not enough. And I said, how long would it need, And I said, no, 1 hour. But when I reached there, I realized that it wasn't enough. It was a fantastic project. I mean, you experience this sort of interior sort of urbanism, I would say more like a interior ecology, which I've never seen in my life. So thanks. I mean, this is a great presentation. So I'd just like to say something before I ask you a question, and I'm sure that there's going to be many questions. Around the time that Mr. Safdie started his practice in 1969, Rene Banham, the architectural theorist, in his book, The Architecture and Well-Tempered Environment, spoke of this new paradigm of interior urbanism. And at that time, and from then on, for the last architects have been striving to bring the city into the interior environments. To do this, many architects have tried to do it. First time where we see the layer of human need, which is nature itself. And I looked at it as a jungle when I went there, which is brought into the idea of interiors. So this whole idea of interior urbanism with this idea of ecology in this kind of landscape is fascinating. And I'm sure for the next 50 years, architects will strive to achieve excellence in this sort of an idea of building itself. Yeah, having said that, questions, many of them, but there's one question I really want to ask you, and this is coming from a YouTube video I was watching. I think it was a TED, right? Of you talking about this whole idea of leading with this whole idea of bringing everybody and bringing them on board and consensus building. So you're actually working in a place like Singapore, if I may say so, quite authoritative in that way. That means directions given to you, you go and achieve, get those tasks done. But bringing in this process of having stakeholders to buy into the process, like contractors, consultants, how difficult is that process in a place like Singapore? Because culturally, they're very, like I said, and how do you bring this in? Because it's a process where you really want everybody to get on board. How difficult was this on at least the Jewel, which is so complex in that sense?
You're on mute yet, Charu.
Charu, you're on mute. You're still on mute, Charu.
You're unmuted, Charu. But you can see you as unmute actually here.
Your
Shravan, can you check?
mic's showing up.
It's
Yeah, your
I'm seeing
mic's
the
showing a
muted
cross,
sign. Yeah,
but-
with the cross.
but in the presenters,
She's not in the presenters anymore.
Oh,
She's
okay. You get it.
gone to an event.
Wait.
I'm just making her the presenter. I think Teams must have.
can you check now, Charu?
Technical glitches.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I want to correct this. It's not like a direction is given to me and I have to get it done. I am part of the team that gets that we design together and we build it together. So even though I am in Singapore,
Singapore as a society, I do understand more like Singapore as a society, which is a very authoritative society. And you, of course, are a part of the design team who's trying to bring in many more people. That was the TED Talk I actually watched. So that's, bring in.
The idea is that this is the idea. This is something that is very important to me and very important to our office, where we do believe that you cannot do architecture by yourself. As architects today, the buildings are so complex that you have to do it with a team. It's like a family, yeah? So we need everybody. We need the engineers and architects and all sorts of people. When you have a strong design and when you believe in your design, it is easy to convince them. It is easy to bring them on board, and particularly you have to inspire them that this is something amazing, this is going to be changed, this will change the way people think. Even though we don't start that we are going to design this as an iconic building, and we know that once the building is done, people make it iconic. It's not up to us. It is more about convincing the idea and believing in the idea. Because after we won the design competition, we so strongly believe in that idea of creating something that is so special. And because we had not done it at this scale, it was very important for us to be very vigilant and make it happen. So we had to make sure that everybody that worked on the project was on board with this idea. So it took a lot of convincing, and it took a lot of arguing, and it took a lot of fighting for it. But at the end of the day, you had to make sure that the people you were working with understood that this is what we were going to build. So it meant really, it was a very, how should I say, a tiresome journey of convincing people that this is the great idea, we have to do it. And even though Singapore is a very regimented country, you can call it, the URA, the Urban Development Authority, is an organization which believes in good design, which believes in good buildings. And it's their planning that has helped us with Marina Bay Sands, or the Gardens by the Bay behind Marina Bay Sands, or even Sky Habitat, where you have to discuss with the developer to provide such big terraces, balconies. It's not easy. So I think with the government does back you up when you have a good project in hand, and the client backs you up when we can convince them about our vision. And then once you have those people, and if they can help you, then it's a matter of working with the contractors. And if you, as you all know, if you treat them with respect, they treat you with respect in return. And so it was more of holding hands, though. It was all about holding hands. It was more about being ahead of them. It was more about this is something that we've been doing for some time now. So it's challenging, but we believe in it, so we can do it. It's very challenging at times.
Thanks. I'm sure there are more questions. I'll come back to asking another one, maybe, if there's time. Mamta, if you can open up the floor with students asking questions, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So students, either you post your questions on the chat and Shravan will moderate them, or you can unmute and speak. The mic is open for all now.
So while we are waiting for questions, I'd really love to commend you on the work you've done. I remember visiting the old Changi airport and the one before the Jewel, and I think the way you described the Jewel in the TED talk, I think a lot of the good parts that you were trying to bring out, like there was some semblance of them in the old ones. So I don't know if you were trying to bring them forward or not, but I could really sense that you kind of did take an old existing idea of the airport and improve on it in the Jewel.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand. So can you repeat the last sentence or last two
I
sentences?
really like how you took the idea of the existing Changi airport and you brought so much more to it in the Jewel with the elements. Like Singapore's known for the gardens by the bay, and there's now another iconic kind of urban landscape in it.
Well, the gardens at Changi Airport are really very tiny installations, though. The Changi Airport, as a design competition, asked for an attraction space, but in their mind, as an attraction space was more about an attraction, which was more of a thematic attraction. It was more of something on the lines of Disneyland kind of thing, or one of those attraction thematic process, which we did not do. In fact, in our competition entry, we didn't even do any of that sort, but we just projected this big garden and big waterfall to be the attraction. And I think they were very stunned by it, literally, because this was beyond their expectation. And when we say design for a place, we do take into account that even though the building is a very modern building and it does not really follow the architecture of the airport, because architecture of the airport is all rectangular buildings, we do take into account a sense of a place, which is Singapore, like you mentioned. And Singapore is a city in a garden, and I think it was very important for us to recreate that. And since this will be the gateway to Singapore, people get a sense of what to expect beyond Jewel.
Yes, I think the fountain really speaks as a space of something that just emerged as a concept and there was no compromise done on how the final design works out. Like it turns out exactly how it should have been conceived.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have another question before you can take some student questions. But I think the added layer of working with the ecology itself. What are the challenges? I mean, we've always seen buildings which have been technologically challenged, pushed structurally, pushed mechanically, pushed environmentally, and of course the complexity of program in this case. But adding this whole new layer of ecology inside a building, what sort of challenges does it bring? Because it's an unknown area. We know botanical gardens, but they are not completely indoor environments which are inhabited 24/7. And this is quite complex in that sense. So what's this new layer? What were the learnings and people found out when you started?
So first and foremost, it was more about, we knew that we were going to do planting. We knew that we were going to do it in the center. That meant we had to have a glass roof because of natural sunlight, daylight. Once we knew what we were going to, that we would have to bring daylight, we knew that the building was for plants and for humans. Totally different requirements. And on top of that, it's shopping. Shopping has a very different requirement in terms of humidity, in terms of whatever mechanical cooling air it's required because of the products that they are displayed in there. So that's why usually you see the malls are very different. The air conditioning system is cool. It's dry as compared to the humidity that you need for planting. Once when we started working with Acharya 10, who helped us to say, okay, you know what? This is the glass, this is the best system that is available in the market right now, which will allow us to get so much of visual light in terms of Singapore's, knowing history of Singapore and studying how much sunlight does Singapore get every single day for the last, 50 years or something like that. So we knew how much daylight we would get. We knew how much humidity we would need for the plants. Changi Airport has a regulation that they said your temperature could not be more than 24 degrees centigrade. So we were limited by the temperature that we had. We also knew that we were not going to cool the whole dome. We were only going to cool the areas where people would walk. That would be only a couple of meters in height that we would cool those spaces. And so knowing all these parameters, we said, okay, where on earth does such climate exist, such microclimate exists? And we realized that it was not somewhere far, but in Asia itself, in the highlands, in somewhere in Thailand, in Cameron Islands, in these areas, we looked at what grows over there. What is the planting that grows over there? And we got that planting. So this is very different from if you look at Gardens by the Bay, which is more of a botanical display of planting types. This isn't a botanical display of planting type. This is a forest, what we were creating. And we wanted to have something that would suit the weather that we were creating over there. And so this was something that we learned on the onset. But what we were not ready for was how challenging it would be to coordinate all the systems that were required for planting. Because it's not just planting, it's not just, here is a planter and you plant in it, but the planter had to satisfy so many other things, the cooling systems and everything for the walkways, for the trails. And that became very challenging because it was a huge space and we wanted to conceal everything. We wanted to make sure everything was integrated, nothing was visible, and that sort of thing. Plus the water feature. We were not sure how much humidity the water would bring in, but but the plants love it. When you're in there, the water mist that gets sprayed because of the big water feature, it really helps the plants. So I think we were learning as we were doing it. We were learning more and more, and I think that really helped. We do have a separate. We are using two different systems: one for the central garden and one for cooling system, and one for the shopping mall. So that also helps a lot. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. It seems very complex even now after you answered it also. So.
I'd like to invite the faculty members. Anybody would like to say something?
Yeah, hi, Charu. Fantastic presentation, and I'm sure the students must have enjoyed it. Many of them are actually looking at Moshe Safdie's Habitat 67 as of today and talking about them in their thesis project. So that's fantastic. But I have one question for you, wherein you started off your presentation and you said that the Sky Garden is like a space for all. So did you all ever imagine as architects that eventually the client or the developer would then start, kind of using it as a tourist destination and charge to get into the Sky Gardens and whatever, and how do you kind of,
you mean the Skypark?
Now that you see projects.
You mean the Skypark?
Yeah, the
in
Skypark.
Singapore. Yeah. No, it
yes.
was always
Yes.
going to be charged. That was the government of Singapore's regulation that it would be charged. The charging is a way of crowd control. So it was always going to be charged from day one. But the idea of creating that space was our idea. When we created the pool and everything, we knew it was like an amazing thing. We could see it during construction. That what an amazing feature it would be. No one can predict this is going to be a very famous building or it's going to be an icon for Singapore. No one can predict that. But we knew that when we were there at the sky deck, when we were at the Skypark, end of the Skypark, we knew that it would be something very beautiful that people would enjoy sitting there. And I think that's the point I'm trying to make, is that when we design these spaces, you have to design more than what is asked for,
Oh, definitely. Yep.
And I think
definitely.
that makes a big difference. And this Skypark, I mean, there's everywhere now we see Skyparks, or after Sky Habitat, everywhere we saw connecting bridges, and which is a fantastic thing. Actually, we have no problem with that. I mean, as long as it's done well, it's a compliment.
Right. I think there were several other aspects in terms of structural engineering. I mean, and when it's completely done and everything is resolved, it looks fantastic. But I think, the students, and probably if you could always give in an input about all these kind of structural engineering techniques which were followed and principles which were followed to kind of make it happen. It'll be a wonderful kind of learning for the students. I don't know if anywhere we can have this again with specific ideas of structural engineering?
Well, there's a lot written about the Skypark and the construction of Skypark. I mean, there's a lot of information available now because it's been there for so long. And it was a marvel of an engineering, it was an engineering feat because it was never done before of such a long cantilever. And also the lifting of that, to lift something up from the ground, structural steel, up to level 58, that itself was an amazing feat. And I think that it was never done, such a big lift had never been done. And I think at that time, I remember once it was just attached and we went up to see it. My God, it was an experience of a lifetime. I have been very extremely fortunate in that way because I was involved in Marina Bay Sands right from the beginning till the end, and then involved in Jewel, and these buildings are once in a lifetime kind of building. And when we were doing Marina Bay Sands, we would say that it was like multiple lifetime experience, because of the different building types that were involved. But yeah, I mean, it's a long story about the Skypark, and maybe some other time, definitely.
Yeah, definitely, because there's so many aspects to it. Whether you look at the shopping complex and the
Yeah.
light coming in, it's wow. And I just wonder why you're saying that you all never knew it would be iconic. Obviously, I mean, it would be with the scale of the kind of construction, etc., and the positioning of the building across the bay. That's something. So I mean,
I think to answer your question, you really cannot decide that the building is going to be iconic. You start with every single building being a special building, and it is special. Whether Marina Bay Sands is famous, so that's why everybody thinks it's very special. But every building that we've done has created an impact, and I think, I don't know, in my TED presentation I had said that. A positive building, a good, well-designed building creates positive ripples, and that's really true because whether it's a museum that we built or Sky Habitat, after we built Sky Habitat, a lot of building types in it's changed in Singapore, and Sky Habitat is based on Habitat 67. It's a modern version of that, and we have started this Habitat series where we are building these projects in different forms, but we are following the same logic of creating gardens for everyone, creating balconies, creating terraces, making sure buildings get maximum sunlight, daylight, good ventilation. The building that we did in Colombo, Sri Lanka, Colombo, this was the tallest building done. It just opened recently, which was we were very thrilled with it. And I think every building when it's under construction, you get the feeling that it's going to be special, and it turns out to be special.
definitely. Thanks.
We do have a question from one of our students. Fleur D'Souza has asked, how do you strike a balance between functionality and aesthetics?
First and foremost, it's not something you start with. Functionality is as separate from aesthetics. That's number one. You have to design a building that belongs to the place, belongs to the site, belongs to the neighborhood. And you have to take the functionality of the building, the program of the building, and you have to say, what can we bring to the building that is going to make it belong to the place? That's going to belong to the neighborhood. That's going to be designed for the people over there, for the community over there. The minute you start doing that, the scale and the proportion and everything comes together. We are not doing something. The thing I want to be very clear about is we are not coming up with a new idea. Natural light, ventilation are very basics of architecture, right? And so if you follow that, and if you follow the scale and the proportion and the neighborhood and the city, you will find a balance of everything coming together. You cannot choose one versus the other, or you cannot give one more importance than the other. Most successful buildings are the buildings that are designed buildings in which the users get the best experience. People come there for experience.
Yeah, she's also asked about sustainability. So I think the natural light and ventilation you mentioned are an important part of sustainable design. But anything else you'd like to add to that?
Well, sustainability now has become like such a uh, popular term, I should say. Like iconic sustainability is another popular term. You know, everything is iconic and everything has to have sustainability. Sustainability means a lot of different things to different people. Of course, you have to be careful. Of course, you have to be aware of what products you're using, how you're using them. Yes, of course, you have to make sure your mechanical systems are the best possible and you're taking care of them, that you make sure that you can contribute to the energy by using PV panels or doing something that's going to help that. At the same time, you make a building sustainable for the users. You know, you make it friendlier. You make sure that the building operators or building people get the most of it, so that the building can be balanced. I think it means that's a lot of things. But you have to take care of the basic parameters, which we've always done. We've never have to make an attempt to do something special. Now we are working on I'm working on a project with designing a headquarters for Sarvana Jurong, and that is like almost what smart building, zero energy building kind of thing. But really, we don't have to do anything much more than doing things right, basically. And I think that is sustainability. If the building is not designed well, then you have to really make a lot of effort. But if you take care of the basic needs of the building and make sure you're working with smart engineers to get it right, I think it helps.
Thank you. Oh, we just do have a question again from Ambika Lamba. How do your Unbuilt project enhance the learning on future projects?
How
How do your Unbuilt projects enhance the learning on future projects?
Oh, unbuilt projects are very helpful. Unbuilt projects are still projects, you know, they just don't get built, but you still put a lot of energy in that. We do a lot of research, like after Habitat 67, our office, this is like last, I would say 10 years, we had a research program where we did a lot of research about habitat buildings, like well, how can we build habitat of the future? Because today's issue with the dense population, urban cities and everything, how do you design buildings? And we are doing that. We are going ahead with our unbuilt projects that are helping us to move ahead to create these new designs and new systems. So unbuilt projects for us are very important. They are like a research projects basically. We don't count them as failures. Those for us are very successful. In fact, now Moshe is coming up with a book of unbuilt projects, just to show how good, how useful they are.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating that you've taken such an approach to Unbuilt projects. And yeah, Shantanu, would you like to?
Yeah, I just have it's a personal curiosity. I don't know how much of the question is more for my personal learning, maybe. If you could, and if you would know that, because it's not that you may know it, because it's a small technical. Would you know or remember the ground cover and the FAR of the sky habitat? This is a very technical question. The ground cover and the FAR of that building. Would you remember it? Or?
Give me a second, please.
It's
Let me
okay.
see. Let me see if I can find it. If I can.
It's a trick question, Shantanu, or what is it?
I'll tell you why. Because when we are teaching housing, we
Right.
always ground cover versus the
The
FXR.
plot ratio was 4.9.
All right.
And the efficiency of the project is 84%.
All right. Okay. Fine. I get it. Thank you.
It's been a long time. But when a project is recent, it's all there in my head. Like, I used to know, like until a few years ago, I knew every color type and Marina Bay Sands and all that stuff. They would keep on calling me. Then I knew about Jewel, and now it's all leaving my brain.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. I think that was a great lesson for all of us in terms of our commitment to ideas. And we all are really impressed by the work. I mean, Singapore is fairly close culturally to us and physically as well. I think a lot of the familiar projects did strike to a lot of people. Thank you so much. It was a great joy having you.
I just want to add one more thing
Oh,
to this. I think when we teach thesis, and trying to inspire people select thesis topics, yeah. And one of the inspiration is Mr. Safdie's project itself, which is a project that actually became reality from a student project. So I think, and there are several such, but this is one of the iconic projects that we look at, which was a student idea that transformed into a part of a city. So I think to all you thesis students, taking that example of thinking large, thinking big, thinking that solutions, when you're a student, sort of untainted, sort of pure ideas can become buildings and serve as references for the future. So, I mean, that stayed in my head all the time. A student with a project being built is a fantastic idea. So look for large ideas, and one day they may become real ideas being built. And thank you, Charu.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. Thank you very much for the opportunity, guys.
We are looking forward to that talks on structural kind of engineering. I mean, if you can put someone, if not you, someone from the office can actually get in touch with Mamta, and Mamta can organize that. So looking forward for it, definitely. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
It was a great learning. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
thank
Yeah,
you so
thanks a lot,
much.
Charu. We've stopped streaming, so we can just have a minute to ourselves. I think